I just wanted to follow up on something you were saying, Asher. While I was thinking about this, I remembered last June, I was at my son's house and my granddaughter had a little 4-year-old tantrum. My son reminded her, do your star breathing, do your star breathing. And that's what she learned in preschool. And I had never heard the term before, but it uses the hand. I don't know if you're familiar with this star breathing. Star breathing, you inhale up your thumb, exhale going down. Inhale going up, 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 exhale going down. This is a 4-year-old. A 4-year-old that's learning this technique in preschool. When she was 4 years old, she gave me this for Christmas, and it's a palm impression that she made in school. And I thought, what a wonderful thing to do for a 4-year-old. But before I start down that path, I asked Walton to read a poem by Robinson Jeffers. Do you have it there, Walton?
There we go. Yeah, I do. So this is, Tim said, a Robinson Jeffers poem called Hands. Inside a cave in a narrow canyon near Tassajara, the vault of rock is painted with hands. A multitude of hands in the twilight, a cloud of men's palms, no more. There's no one to say whether the brown, shy, quiet people who are dead intended religion or magic or made their tracings in the idleness of art, but over the division of years, these careful signs manual are now like a sealed message, saying, look, we were also human. We had hands, not paws. All hail, you people with the cleverer hands, our supplanters in the beautiful country. Enjoy her a season, her beauty, and come down and be supplanted, for you also are human.
When I talked about this, a few months ago, I talked about the hand as a mnemonic device. The Navajo people, they say each finger is a physical sense. And they talked about the invisible senses are the spaces between the fingers. I talked a little bit about those 4 invisible senses that I kind of stumbled upon. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, and that it may not fit what you think or believe, but it's a way for me to combine a lot of the things that I've worked on for 50 years, since 1972. One of the things that the invisible senses, as I indicated last time, they follow the path of the sun. The first invisible sense is awareness, which is connected with the rising sun. The second invisible sense is drive. Multiple levels, the drive can be curiosity or ambition. And that's connected with the midday sun. The third invisible sense is the sense of balance. And that's connected with the dusk time, the setting sun. And the fourth invisible sense is a sense of reverence or awe. And that's connected with the midnight, the darkness. Ever since I was a teenager, I loved walking in the dark. And of course, being raised in a big family, it was an escape. I could have space. But there was something about the midnight, walking the city, walking the country at midnight. I felt this sense of awe, this sense of expansion and reverence inside that I didn't feel inside a confined home. And it was just last week I was looking at some video with Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell was talking about how a person goes around during the day, and when they get to the fourth stage, or he said the word that comes out automatically is, oh, the sense of reverence and beauty. And he said that sound connects us directly to the spiritual world. At night, in the dark, in the black, if we're not filled with fear, if we're relaxed, we more easily connect with the spirit world because we're not distracted by many of the other senses. I wanted to continue going around this circle, going around the spiral. With the four invisible senses intact, you start going around the circle with these invisible senses. There are four interior needs to grow and be healthy. And the first one is a sense of boundaries. We have to develop boundaries. A baby coming out of the womb has to find the boundary between itself and the mother. That's one boundary between itself and this world, this physical world. And as it goes around, what's the first thing a baby does? It goes for the mother. The second interior need, the noontime world, is a development of manners. So the first one is a development of boundary. The second one is a development of manners. Development of manners helps you negotiate that boundary between yourself and the other. Sometimes you're helped, sometimes you're not. Parents have to teach their children manners. When I went to work at the correctional facility, it's one of the first things we had to do with the young boys because so many of them had no manners. They had to learn to say please, thank you, to address their elders with Mr. or Mrs. The simple little manners that most of us learned, they did not have, which also meant that they had difficulty with boundaries. A development of manners helps you negotiate with the world. It doesn't mean you care about anything out there. It just helps you negotiate. It's a lubricant of sorts. Makes it easier for you to move around in the physical world with physical beings. So that's second stage that is needed. The third stage moves a little bit further down, a little bit deeper. And that is, you have to learn morals. Now, with morals, that means you care for the other in one way or another. You care for that person. You care for that animal. You care for the earth. You care for the whatever's around you. You have a care. You care for that. The morals are the third, and that's connected with the setting sun. It's also connected with balance, from the invisible sense of balance, the setting sun balance. As you develop your morals and you have a sense of balance, you're back into a sense of awe, a sense of reverence, and what you need to learn there is a sense of worship or prayer. So the four needs are a sense of boundary, sense of manners, sense of morals, and a sense of prayer. That's not prayer in the sense of please give me something. It's a prayer of worship, a prayer of gratitude, a prayer of reverence. So we move around the circle. And as we continue to grow, as I talked last time, it's in a spiral fashion. We go around and around, but we're adding onto the other circuits that we've made. I wanted to include a third set of 4. And this is something that I worked with when I was working in Red Wing with the juveniles. We had a program, and I taught moral thinking or moral development, because these boys had to develop things inside that they never were taught, and it's something that they had to think about. And the program was based upon the work of a psychologist, a child psychologist called Lawrence Kohlberg, who developed stages of development. It's very academic, and he said there were 6 stages, and it was, pre-conventional moral development, post-conventional moral development, just academic language. The men that provided our curriculum kind of took Kohlberg's work and reduced it to 4 types of moral thinking or moral development. And I put that on top of these other 4 invisible senses and the 4 needs. The first level of moral thinking, they called might makes right. Whoever is strongest gets to decide what is moral and who is moral and who is not. So it's a morality of power. Narcissists are the best at it. I have the power, I get to say what's right, what's wrong. But everybody has to go through these stages. When you're a baby, you have to cry, you have to scream, you have to kick to get what you want. And of course, toddlers, the 2-year-old toddler throws his tantrum thinking that power is going to help them get what they want. It's about a power dynamic. And that's the first level of moral development. And when we met so many of the boys, they'd come in, and that's how they existed on the street. If they were in a gang, it was the head of the gang who had the most power. He told them what to do, and they believed in that hierarchical power structure. So we had to meet them there because we're a boys' prison. Of course we were the more powerful. But we had to meet them and then help them move on. After the power dynamic, they had to learn the second level, which was called, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. Making deals. Treat me right, I'll treat you right. That's the mercantile process. It's a different kind of power. It's a power of manipulation. It's about doing favors back and forth. At that level, I used to explain that when a young man in the gang got to be a certain age, physically, he was more powerful than that older man who ran the gang. So the older man had to put him into a position where, okay, if you do this for me, I'll make sure that you have so many girlfriends or whatever the payoff was. I'll make sure that your family is protected. It's a morality based on an exchange of favors. There's not really a caring about the other. It's still a very selfish morality. That is connected with the midday sun, where the entire world, outer world, the physical world is all lit up. That's where youngsters, they learn to keep their eyes going all the time. So the third level that we then would encourage, it's the old idea of do unto others. Do unto others as you would have done to you. However, they twisted it just slightly. Do unto others as you would hope they do unto you. There's a little shift going on. It's a shift away from just an exchange system of favors. Now it's about, I'm going to move out ahead of that exchange. I'm going to trust a little bit more. I'm going to trust the bigger world, whether it's a spiritual world, a physical world. I'm going to feel more comfortable, and I'm going to let it happen. And of course, once you start doing that, all of us here, we'd understand that because we're older. We understand that what you give is what you get. That's more in a sharing morality. It's not a morality just doing what I need. It's not just a selfish consumption. And when you're doing for others as you would hope they do for you, you're also finding a new balance. And the rewards start coming both from the outside world and the inside world. Those things start feeling good, which then moves you into the fourth level. The fourth level is the level that we call giving back, or we can call it service. It's easy with a young boy who's a teenager to point out that he may have been in service to his family. A lot of the young men that I dealt with who were drug dealers said, the only reason I did it was so that I could feed my little brother and sister. And I would point out, that's being of service. You may have made a wrong choice there, but you did it for a purpose of service. Let's see if we can go around the circle again and get to the point where you can serve more than your little brother and your little sister. Where we had the boys at Red Wing, they all lived in a cottage or different cottages. As the boys would go through their stages of moral development, we could point out those who had been there longer and understood this moral development. They could point out, to the new kid, you're just being selfish. You don't have the power here. This is not a power dynamic in our cottage. Quite often it would take a year and a half to get these boys to understand that circle. That circle of morality and moral development. I was able to put that on top of the other circles that I had made with the invisible senses, with the needs for growing. And again, it goes right back to the spiral that I talked about last time. The spiral goes around and around, and the more often you go around that circle, the stronger your interior gets. The more of a life force is inside of you. And the more you're aware of the life forces outside of you. It's not just a consumptive existence any longer. So these were important steps. I started to realize that there were some other things happening. The hand, the actual hand is part of the big spiral of life. If you look at your fingertips, we have fingerprints, which are basically spirals. And we interface with the outer world through a spiral. And it's this amazing thing. If we each look at our fingertips, sometimes, there's something that goes this way or that way. Something doesn't quite go the complete circle. It might misdirect for a little while. Well, that's the way our lives are. I'm sure that you've all walked a labyrinth at some time, and you start walking the labyrinth, which is a spiral with a lot of dead ends and to go backwards. Our fingerprints are labyrinths, labyrinths of our lives. And that's how we interface with the outer world, and it's part of our inner world. The life comes through us and comes through these spirals of growth. And they manifest individually in the hand, which is the symbol of human beings. I thought it was really a wonderful thing that you put up the notice, Asher, of Tyson's hand, the palm hand, the teaching that they do with the hand. It's a different system. It can expand the systems that we all have, that we all grow with. It's like studying another spiritual tradition. But one of the things that I found that was so important is they all go back deep inside, as you call it, the fifth direction. And that fifth direction actually goes from inside to outside. It's just a different direction. You're in a different plane. It's the wonderful thing that I found studying various religious traditions, literary traditions. The best of them have a way of simplifying the complex lives that we have to live, the complex archives of information. That's why I came back to the hand, is because the hand is universal for human beings. It's universal. My granddaughter, I don't know how many children do that. I'm sure there are millions of children that love to put their hand and make their handprint on a mud pie. All over the world, they love it because there's a fascination with the soul, even if it's out of a 4-year-old, touching the earth, interfacing with the earth, interfacing with life. So often, most of us, out of this learning tradition that came out of the West, out of Europe, most of that is about specialization, ultimately. Specialization and monetization. A lot of the work, like I said, that Lawrence Kohlberg, who worked with moral development, he loved using words that be 6, 8 syllables long. Academia is full of that. That serves them rather well. But then we have to translate. Somebody has to translate that language, something that's simplified, so we can deal with children. So we can deal with those who don't much care for 9-syllable words. And those people are just as important as the academics. Now, I had a little fun this week. I just wanted to read this translation. This is a translation of a short Antonio Machado poem. And this is just a fun thing for me to do as a poet, to kind of give you an example of what I'm talking about. To possess confabulation, pursue initial interrogation, then attend to others' oral communication. When I say those things, your mind has to go, well, do I know that word? What da-da-da-da? Well, this is what Antonio Machado wrote in this Robert Bly's translation. To have dialogue, first ask, then listen. It's fun to play around out there at the edge of the tree with the confabulation and the interrogation and the communication as it all rattles. That's kind of fun for me to do, but I sure as heck wouldn't talk to my granddaughter like that. But if I want my granddaughter to grow up to be a moral person, I would say, first ask and then listen. That's how you learn. And that has been missing in a lot of Western culture. And I think a lot of the indigenous people recognize that that's one of the flaws of our education system. I've gone on for a while here, so I think I'll just back off on that and let that stew, and we can talk about some other things. And a little later, I'll read a couple poems to end with. That's just what we've got. I'd like to read just a couple little poems before we have to go. This is a poem about my son, and this is from my first book, and it's called We Collect Gull Feathers. I've read this a number of times over the years. As the evening dies over Pepin, we collect gull feathers, black and white ones, and pretend they were dropped by the eagle whose track and wing marked the gray Mississippi sandbar. Jesse remarked as we arrived, "If I point at hawks, they fly away. But if I don't, they stay in their trees." The river moves heavily south, and the sun drops beyond the bluffs. The air chills me. I want to keep my fingers in my pocket because everything moves on here, except that sweet pain of love that knows he's growing up to leave me. The power of the hand, the power of the finger. One of the things Martine Prechtel told us is, be careful, don't be pointing at things. And how the old men used to do is they used to just kind of lift their hand in a direction, or else they'd use their lips. Because there's power in the hand. And the more times you go around the circle, the more power there is. One more poem I'd like to read, and then we close it down. And this is for my dad. And this is called Fair, Not Fair. I've graded my cabbages into a crock. Even their hearts and tough stems. I followed my father's recipe. I mixed salt and slaw in layers and put a water bag seal on top. My father demanded, be fair. It's hard to do. Others taught that life's just not fair. And it's not. If you are always thirsty for someone else's life.